You ever watch a house of cards collapse from the bottom up and realize you were the one who pulled the first card without anyone noticing? That's how this whole thing started. Name's Dalton, and if you'd asked anyone in our small Colorado town, they'd have told you I had the perfect life, a steady job in custom woodworking, a gorgeous wife named Lacey, and a circle of buddies tighter than a drum. Picture perfect, right? Except perfect things tend to crack the easiest when pressure's applied in just the right places. A few months back, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Lacey smiling at her phone a little too much. Taking calls in the driveway. Picking fights over nothing so she could storm off somewhere, anywhere that wasn't home. I didn't confront her. I didn't even let on that I noticed. See, I grew up around gamblers, men who didn't flinch when the pot was high, men who knew that patience, not rage, was how you took the whole table. Meanwhile, my friends Zeke, Marshall, and Cody decided to turn my life into their own little game. Without knowing I was aware, they started placing bets. Actual money changing hands. They bet on whether I'd scream, cry, swing, or crumble when I found out about Lacey's little hobby. They even joked about it behind my back. Small town grapevine's good for one thing, it carries whispers real fast if you know where to listen. But here's the thing they didn't know, I wasn't planning to react. I was planning to win. So I let them talk. I let them bet. I smiled when they teased me and nodded when they told me how lucky I was to have a wife like Lacey. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was setting up something bigger. Much bigger. Every text she sent, every location she snuck off to documented. Every snide comment my friends made recorded. It wasn't rage that fueled me. It was cold, steady calculation. Because when the moment came, and it would come, they weren't just going to lose their bets. They were going to lose everything they thought was safe. And I was going to walk away without even raising my voice. The trick to winning a game you didn't sign up for is simple: make the players think you're not even aware it's happening. That's exactly what I did. Every day, I let them believe I was the same clueless Dalton, whistling while I sanded oak boards at the shop, laughing at their jokes over beers at Maddie's Tavern, tossing horseshoes in the park like life was one big, warm summer evening. I let them think they had me cornered, that I was walking blindfolded toward the drop-off. Meanwhile, I was busy building my parachute. Lacey wasn't careful. She thought she was. She changed her phone password once every 2 weeks, left her burner phone in the glove box of her car like it was a clever hiding place, and flirted in public thinking nobody noticed the way she leaned in too close to other men. She forgot that I knew her better than she knew herself. I didn't confront her because confrontation is messy. Confrontation gives people time to regroup, to lie, to manipulate. I wanted her to dig her own grave slowly, steadily, until she was too far down to climb out. I started gathering everything. Photos of her car parked outside Marshall's lake cabin on nights she claimed she was at book club. Screenshots of messages she thought she deleted thanks to a little app one installed long before things got this bad. Audio recordings of the late-night phone calls where she giggled like a teenager at jokes that weren't mine. Evidence stacked higher than the firewood at my workshop. And my friends Zeke, Marshall, Cody, they kept betting. It wasn't just about how I would react anymore. It grew uglier. Now they bet on how long it would take me to completely break down. Zeke put $100 on within a week. Cody said I'd lose my mind and torch the house. Marshall, grinning like a damn snake, said I'd just crawl away and disappear like a whip dog. I smiled with them. I even threw in a few fake jokes about how lucky I was to fuel their smugness. Inside, I was ice. I wasn't just planning to survive their little game. I was planning the biggest checkmate any of them had ever seen. They thought they were circling a wounded animal. What they didn't know was that I'd been leading them straight into a trap built so carefully, so patiently that when it snapped shut, they wouldn't even have time to scream. All I needed was the right day, the right setting, the perfect storm, and it arrived faster than I expected. One evening, Zeke texted me, inviting me to an emergency guys' night at Marshall's place, beers, cards, no drama. My gut told me everything was aligning. I knew Lacey would be there too. She thought she was sneaky, slipping into Marshall's circle whenever I wasn't looking, but she never noticed that my world was smaller than hers. Tighter. Less forgiving. I told Zeke I'd be there. I told him I couldn't wait. And for the first time in months, I meant every single word. The night that would change everything had finally arrived. And none of them, not my cheating wife, not my backstabbing friends, were ready for what I had in store. I pulled into Marshall's driveway just after 8, the Colorado twilight stretching long shadows across the yard. Their cars were already there, Cody's dented pickup, Zeke's flashy new Jeep, and parked just a little too close to the side entrance, Lacey's red Jetta. No hiding it tonight. No excuses about dinner with coworkers or early gym classes. It was all right there, out in the open. Like they wanted me to see it. Like they thought I'd be so stunned, so broken, that I wouldn't even know what to do. I sat in my truck for a minute, engine idling low, watching the house glow with laughter and movement inside. They were already drinking, already celebrating my humiliation like it was a guaranteed win. I could almost hear the clink of beer bottles and the scratch of Marshall's old record player spinning some worn-out country song. Good. Let them get comfortable. Let them think the lamb was walking into the slaughter willingly. I killed the engine and grabbed the small black binder from the passenger seat. Neatly organized inside, copies of all the evidence I had gathered. Photos, screenshots, recordings, printed text threads, even timestamps cross-referenced with Lacey's supposed whereabouts. Everything documented with the kind of precision that left no room for doubt, no cracks they could slip through. I didn't feel nervous. I felt electric. Focused. As I walked up the steps, I thought about how easy it would have been to lose my mind months ago. How easy it would have been to scream, to beg, to fall apart. But that was what they bet on. That was what they needed me to do to feel superior. And I hadn't given it to them. I was about to give them something else entirely. I opened the door without knocking. Nobody even noticed. The music was too loud, the laughter too obnoxious. They were in the living room, gathered around the battered poker table. Zeke was already half drunk, Cody was dealing cards with a smug grin, and Marshall, the self-appointed ringleader, leaned back in his chair with Lacey practically perched on the armrest beside him, her hand resting a little too casually on his shoulder. The moment Lacey saw me, she flinched just a little but recovered fast, pasting on the fake smile she'd been practicing for weeks. "Dalton. Hey man, thought you might chicken out." Zeke hollered across the room, lifting his beer in a mock toast. "Yeah," Cody chuckled, "figured you'd be home crying into your pillow." Lacey laughed too. A sharp, forced sound that twisted my stomach but didn't reach her eyes. I smiled back, wide, calm, steady. "Nah," I said easily, setting the binder down in the center of the table like it was just another deck of cards. "I wouldn't miss this for the world." They glanced at it, confused. Zeke reached for it first, flipping the cover open with a lazy, drunken flick of his wrist. His grin faded almost instantly. One by one, the others leaned in, their faces dropping from amusement to confusion to dawning horror. The pages spoke for themselves. No yelling required. No accusations necessary. Just cold, brutal facts staring them in the face. Silence crashed over the room like a hammer. For the first time in months, none of them had a damn thing to say. I took a seat, leaned back, and watched them squirm. "Funny thing about bets," I said casually, tapping the table with my fingertips. "Sometimes you win more than you bargained for. Sometimes you lose a lot more than you ever thought possible." And I hadn't even gotten to the best part yet. Because tonight wasn't just about exposing them. It was about taking back everything they thought they stole from me and making damn sure they remembered exactly who they tried to play. I could see it written all over their faces, that slow, miserable comprehension sinking in like a stone dropped in deep water. Lacey's hand slipped off Marshall's shoulder like she had touched a hot stove. Zeke's mouth flapped open, struggling to find anything to say, but no words came. Cody shoved his chair back so fast it screeched against the hardwood floor. And Marshall just sat there, trying to hide the fact that he was already sweating through his stupid flannel shirt. I leaned forward a little, not because I needed to intimidate them, they were already cracked wide open, but because I wanted them to really hear me. "You know," I said, voice low but steady, "I used to think loyalty meant something. Used to believe that the people you chose to keep around you, friends, family, a wife, that they were the foundation you built your life on. Turns out, sometimes you build your life on a rotten foundation and don't realize it until the whole thing starts to stink." No one moved. No one breathed. "See, while you were busy betting how I'd fall apart," I continued, flipping a page in the binder for dramatic effect, "I was busy making sure you wouldn't just lose your little wager. You'd lose everything else too." I turned to Marshall first because it felt right. "You remember that land deal you were so excited about? The one you thought was hush-hush? Guess who owns the majority rights to that property now? Bought it right out from under you 3 weeks ago. You're gonna love the new no-access signs going up next week." His face turned an unhealthy shade of gray. I shifted to Zeke. "And you, buddy? That new loan you just took out to expand your landscaping business? Hate to break it to you, but the silent investor you thought was backing you pulled out yesterday. Should have read the fine print. You're about to owe triple what you borrowed, and good luck making those payments without the summer contracts I redirected to other companies." Zeke slumped in his seat like someone had cut the strings holding him up. Finally, I looked at Cody. "And Cody, How's your marriage? Good? I hope so. Because after tonight, you'll have a real fun time explaining to your wife why you were helping cover up Lacey's little adventures instead of, coming clean like a decent human being. He paled. I didn't need to say more. He knew exactly what his wife would do once she saw the copies of the text messages I'd already sent to her anonymously. And then there was Lacey. I saved her for last. She had pushed her chair back by now, arms folded tightly across her chest like she was trying to shrink herself into nothing. Her lip quivered just slightly, the bravado she usually wore crumbling in real time. She wasn't used to being powerless. She wasn't used to me being powerful. You could have just been honest, I said to her, softer than the others. You could have said you were bored or wanted out. I would have respected that. But you decided to lie, cheat, laugh at me behind my back with the people I trusted most. So now you get exactly what you earned. She opened her mouth. Maybe to apologize, maybe to plead, but I held up a hand to stop her. I wasn't interested in her words anymore. Words were worthless to me now. I stood up slowly, feeling lighter than I had in years. No yelling, no violence, no messy scenes. Just a clean, cold dismantling of everything they had built against me. Before I walked out the door, I dropped a final envelope onto the table, labeled simply, "To be opened after I'm gone." Inside, a letter explaining how I'd already filed for divorce, moved my money into protected accounts, and ensured that every single person in that room would face the consequences of their own betrayal. Legally, financially, and socially. No revenge, just consequences. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. As I stepped out into the crisp night air, leaving them all scrambling to pick up the pieces, I realized something simple but profound. When you stay calm while everyone else plays dirty, you don't just survive. You win. And tonight, I had just won everything. I didn't look back once as I walked down the porch steps, crossed the yard, and slid back into my truck. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the faint sounds of chaos already erupting behind me. Chairs scraping, angry voices rising, the heavy slam of a fist against wood. Good. Let them turn on each other. Let the rot they created finally start eating them from the inside out. I pulled away from the house slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. I had planned every move like a game of chess, and tonight, I checkmated them all without breaking a sweat. But I wasn't finished yet. The real beauty of a fall isn't just the moment when someone stumbles. It's when you watch them realize there's no way to catch themselves. That's why the next phase of my plan had already been set in motion long before tonight. The moment I left that house, a series of dominoes had started tipping over, and none of them could stop what was coming. The first was Lacey's career. She worked as a PR manager for a mid-sized tech company downtown. A job that demanded a spotless reputation and an ironclad moral code, at least publicly. A few weeks ago, using an anonymous account, I had sent her boss a tidy little packet. Purely factual, purely evidentiary. Screenshots, time-stamped GPS locations, even video clips from security footage I legally obtained. No commentary, no accusations. Just facts. Quiet, devastating facts. I knew the company's policy on public image scandals like the back of my hand. HR wouldn't make a scene. They wouldn't call her into a meeting. They'd simply let her show up Monday morning to find her access revoked. Her name scrubbed from the internal system. Her final check mailed to her last known address. Dignified and brutal, exactly how betrayal should be handled. Next was the social fallout. Small towns don't forget, and they definitely don't forgive quietly. Anonymous leaks to community Facebook groups, a few whispered conversations at the coffee shop, a handful of well-placed "did you hear about" comments at church on Sunday. No slander. No lies. Just facts presented neutrally left to spread like wildfire. Zeke, Cody, and Marshall's businesses were about to tank too, slowly but surely. I had spent months building relationships with their competitors, subtly steering opportunities and clients away from them. I wasn't trying to destroy them overnight, that would be too easy. I wanted them to feel it week after week, month after month, as the ground crumbled out from under their feet. And me? I had already made my escape. Quietly, carefully, I had sold our house. Moved my savings into accounts that Lacey couldn't touch. Bought a modest cabin 2 towns over under an LLC she didn't even know existed. My name wasn't tied to anything anymore. No debts. No ties. No handholds for anyone to drag me back down. I wasn't running. I was disappearing on my terms. As I turned onto the highway leaving Marshall's house and all the wreckage behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Not the fragile kind you cling to when you're barely surviving, but the kind you carve out for yourself with your own hands. People talk a lot about forgiveness. About moving on, letting go. Maybe they're right. But me? I didn't need forgiveness. I didn't need to let go. I just needed to win, quietly and absolutely, and leave the broken pieces for the ones who deserved them. They placed their bets. They played their games. And tonight, they learned something they should have known all along. You don't gamble against a man who's willing to lose everything to make sure you lose more. And I hadn't even begun to enjoy my victory yet. The first few days after I disappeared were almost unsettling in their quietness. No angry texts. No desperate voicemails. No late-night knocks on the door begging for forgiveness. Just silence, heavy and pure, like freshly fallen snow. I stayed at the cabin, miles away from the mess I'd left behind, working with my hands during the day and sitting on the porch at night, listening to the owls and the crackling of the trees in the wind. But even silence has a sound if you listen carefully enough. It came to me in waves, news filtering in through old friends, through anonymous messages I had set up before I left. Lacey was the first to feel it. Fired from her job without so much as a formal meeting. Locked out of her accounts. Her reputation, the carefully curated image of the perfect wife and brilliant professional, shattered overnight. People she once called friends turned cold. Invitations dried up. Even her family, who had once worshipped the ground she walked on, grew strangely distant when the details started to leak out. I wasn't there to see it happen. I didn't need to be. I already knew exactly how it would unfold. Then came the collapse of my so-called friends. Marshall's land deal, the one he had bet his savings on, fell apart spectacularly. Without access to the waterfront, the buyers backed out and he was left with a worthless patch of dirt and a mountain of debt he couldn't hope to cover. Zeke's landscaping company filed for bankruptcy less than a month later, the bank repossessing his equipment before he could even finish his spring contracts. Cody's marriage? Over. His wife served him with divorce papers publicly right in the middle of Sunday brunch at the town diner after receiving the anonymous package I had sent. Each downfall came like clockwork, methodical and merciless, and none of them knew who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. They probably suspected. They probably whispered to each other late at night, trying to piece it together. But by the time they realized, if they ever did, it wouldn't matter. Meanwhile, I built a new life, piece by piece. I kept to myself mostly. The cabin sat on a quiet stretch of land overlooking a lake, far enough away that I didn't run into familiar faces. I bought a dog, an old rescue mutt with a limp and a crooked ear, named him Buck, and found that he was better company than most of the people I used to call friends. There was a kind of peace in starting over, a rough, honest peace, stripped of all the lies and betrayals that had once weighed me down. No pretending. No second-guessing every glance or every word. Just me, the woods, and the slow, steady rebuilding of a life that belonged entirely to me now. But even as I built something new, I kept an eye on the past, not out of spite, but out of a cold, necessary vigilance. I needed to know if any of them would come looking for revenge, or apologies, or redemption. And sure enough, about 6 weeks after I left it all behind, the past came knocking. Not in the form of angry threats or tearful confessions. No, it came much quieter, much more desperate. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in bruised purple and gold, I heard tires crunching on the gravel road that led up to my cabin. I stood on the porch, Buck at my side, as a battered sedan rolled into view. It was Lacey, alone, haggard, eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights and whatever fresh hell she had been living through. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world seemed to hold its breath around us. And then, without any warning, she stepped out of the car and did something I hadn't expected. She dropped to her knees in the dirt, begging. But I wasn't the man she used to know anymore. And whatever she thought she could salvage, she was about to learn how deeply it had already been buried. I stayed where I was, one hand resting casually on Buck's head as he growled low under his breath. The sun behind me threw a long shadow across the gravel, stretching toward her like a black line she didn't dare cross. Lacey's hands trembled as she pressed them into the dirt, trying to lift herself back to her feet, but failing. She looked wrecked, hair tangled, makeup streaked, clothes hanging off her like they didn't fit anymore. It was a far cry from the woman who used to strut through our house like she was untouchable. For a second, just a second, some old instinct in me twitched. The urge to reach out, to help, to forgive. But it died just as quickly as it surfaced. That Dalton was gone. She finally forced herself upright, brushing the dirt off her jeans with trembling hands. "Dalton?" she rasped, her voice hoarse from either crying or screaming. Probably both. "Please, I just need to talk to you. I just need a chance." I leaned against the porch post, crossing my arms. "Talk," I said simply. "From there." She flinched but nodded. "I messed up. I know that. I thought I was chasing something better. I don't know what I thought anymore. Everything's gone now. My job, my friends, my family barely speaks to me. I have nothing. I have no one." The bitterness in her voice wasn't lost on me. It wasn't regret over what she did. It was regret over what she lost. Over being caught. Over facing the consequences. "You didn't lose everything," I said calmly. "You threw it away. Big difference." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not hate. Not anger. Certainly not love. Just a hollow sort of finality, like hearing the last echo of a song you used to like but now barely remembered. "I can change," she whispered. "I have changed. I swear it. I just need you to give me another chance. Please, Dalton. I'll do anything." It would have been so easy to let her back in. That's what most people do, right? Cling to the familiar even if it's toxic. Forgive, forget, pretend like the scars don't itch every time it rains. But I wasn't most people anymore. I studied her for a long moment. Let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. "You didn't come here because you love me," I said finally. "You came here because you're scared. You thought the people you betrayed me for would catch you when you fell. They didn't. And now you're hoping I'll do it instead." Her mouth opened, closed. No denial, because she knew it was true. "I'm not your safety net, Lacey," I continued, my voice steady, cold. "I'm the ground you hit when there's no one left to catch you." Her shoulders shook as a fresh wave of sobs racked her body. She dropped her head into her hands, sinking onto the hood of her car like the weight of her own choices was finally too much to carry. I turned and whistled for Buck, who immediately bounded down the steps and trotted to my side. Without another glance at Lacey, I headed toward the woods behind the cabin, the last rays of sunset painting the sky blood red. I didn't owe her my anger. I didn't owe her my forgiveness. And I sure as hell didn't owe her a second chance. Some things, once broken, are better left shattered. She would have to find her way through the ruins of her life alone. And I had a new life to build, one that didn't include her. Weeks passed after that night Lacey came crawling back, but she never returned to my cabin again. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to salvage. Maybe she finally understood that some mistakes cost more than anyone can pay. Either way, her chapter in my life was closed, sealed with no room for rewrites. I rebuilt quietly. No grand declarations, no revenge speeches, no parading my new life in anyone's face. That wasn't my style. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Instead, I poured my energy into my craft. The woodworking shop I opened in the next town started small. Just me and Buck, shaping pieces of raw timber into something lasting. Something real. Word spread faster than I expected. People appreciated honest work done by someone who didn't talk much but listened well. Commissions piled up. Clients told friends. Friends told neighbors. It was the first time in a long time that I felt genuinely proud, not because of a title, not because of a paycheck, but because everything I was building was mine. Not borrowed. Not shared with people who would stab me in the back the moment it suited them. Every plank, every joint, every smooth finished surface was a reminder I had survived. Not just survived, thrived. I made real friends too, the kind who didn't care about gossip or status. A couple of old-timers from the fishing dock, a few young guys who worked at the mill and loved talking about dreams bigger than their paychecks. We had fires down by the lake some nights, passing around stories and laughter so genuine it felt like breathing fresh air after years trapped in smoke. And then one crisp fall morning I met someone new. It wasn't planned. Wasn't a grand romantic moment out of a movie. Just a simple encounter. Her name was Maeve, a veterinarian who came out to treat a neighbor's livestock. She had calloused hands, a crooked smile, and eyes that didn't dart away when you looked too closely. We talked about dogs first. Buck took to her immediately, which was rare. Then we talked about everything else, slowly, carefully, like people who knew what it meant to lose and still be willing to hope again. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. There was a quiet understanding between us, a respect for old wounds without trying to pretend they never existed. One evening, sitting on the dock with our feet in the water, Maeve turned to me and said, "You ever think maybe all the wreckage had to happen first, just so you could end up exactly where you're supposed to be?" I looked out over the lake, the stars just beginning to freckle the sky, and for the first time in years I realized I truly believed it. "Yeah," I said, smiling a real, easy smile. "Yeah, maybe it did. Sometimes life falls apart spectacularly. Sometimes you lose things you thought you couldn't live without. But sometimes, if you're lucky and patient and a little bit stubborn, you find out that what you build from the ashes is stronger, truer, and more beautiful than anything you lost." And this time I wasn't just surviving. I was finally living.